Is there another country in the world where the two strikes policy is already operating, and what effects has that had?
I don't believe there is another country. Australia's been a leader in many areas of public policy. Some people are telling us we shouldn't be a leader in this area, but of course the same thing was said about the advisory vote on remuneration reports some time ago, that would cause all sorts of problems to have shareholders having a vote, having a say on the remuneration report, even if that didn't lead to anything. What we've been looking at and what we've proposed is giving a little bit more grunt to that no vote, but short of intruding into the role of the board in deciding what the structure of remuneration would be. So the two strikes policy was intended to increase the signal from shareholders in the first instance through a requirement for boards to report back, and if they hadn't reported back and there was a sufficient threshold of discontent, that they would be required to stand for re-election. Now, as you can imagine, we've had a lot of reaction to that proposal, and the point I made earlier stands that we put our draft reports out. They are genuinely draft reports, and we look at all those things in making a decision. So in that area, as in some others, we haven't had the benefit of overseas experience, although there have been recommendations in other jurisdictions that are similar, or at least in the same ballpark to that. But we don't see that as a reason for not making recommendations that we think are effectively stress tested through the process that we're going through.
Mr. Banks, Stephen Long from the ABC. I thought there were very interesting and potentially very worthwhile recommendations in the report, but when I read it, I was puzzled as to how you derived your core assumption, which was that the market for executive salaries functions much like any other market. I saw you found a statistical correlation between size of firm and executive salary levels, but then it seemed to me that there was an assertion or a logical leap that was because companies were in a position with that size to purchase the best talent and had a strong interest in doing so, and therefore the salaries were a reward for skill. There's a whole body of international literature that shows a very weak correlation between executive salaries and corporate performance, and indeed there's a whole body of literature that argues that labour markets don't function like other markets, let alone markets for executive salaries. Where is the evidence for that core assumption and assertion in your report?
Now, I'd hate to say that you were putting words into my mouth, Stephen, but we didn't say that. So we said that the market for executives wasn't too dissimilar from labour markets generally. We didn't say that both of them were like the market for cabbages, if that's where you were going. And I mean, they have obviously two sides to the market, and they have particular characteristics that reflect the nature of those markets. Now, one of the points we made, and we've seen the literature that you've referred to, and understand that literature, but one of the points that we made was that in a large firm, in a firm that's with a market cap of billions of dollars, the value of the CEO becomes proportionally more important than the value of a CEO in a small firm. And in fact, I don't want to lapse into economist jargon, but the value of the marginal product of that person is proportionately higher. So the sheer scale of the firm, the sheer capacity of the CEO at the margin to make decisions that could add millions of dollars of value or take away millions of dollars of value from shareholders in itself is a very important reason why boards will be seeking to have the best person. Now, another argument is, well, anybody can do that job. Now, that's probably true within limits, but not everybody could do the job equally well. And it follows from what I said that even if you had a pool of 10 candidates, all of whom have similar experience, etc., there are some qualities that will stand out in terms of the board's perception of the impact on the performance of the firm. Judgment being one, even empathy another one, communication skills, things that people do vary on and that are subjective in nature. And getting the right package of those skills is a very critical issue for a company, and much more important for a big company because of the downsides as well as the upsides from getting it wrong. And we've all seen what happens when CEOs, the wrong CEO is appointed to a company. So I'm not saying that the market's perfect. That market's not perfect like other markets. And if mistakes are made, you do see the consequences for that. But that, to me, only illustrates the point that those decisions are very important ones to companies, very important ones for boards. And erring on the side of paying a CEO a bit more, maybe more than that person needs to get out of bed in the morning, but to ensure that they get the right person to deliver the right job for the shareholders of that particular company is a very important thing.
Couldn't it make just as much sense that there's a bigger pool of money to draw upon in terms of the size issue with salary?
Well, are you telling me that a large company maybe is more insensitive, has more capacity to pay an extra $1 million and not notice it than a smaller one? But that's just the flip side of the point I'm making. You know, that a large company has a lot at stake as well. But anyway, I think it's all in our report, and if you read chapter 4, Stephen, I'm sure you'll be convinced.
I think there's a question.
I read it.
Okay.